7th. This is the call to order. Would you please go ahead and call the roll, Emma?
Margie Davy,
Here.
Lisa Marone,
Here.
Jacob Claymeyer,
Here.
Alyssa Ranke, Vic Oliver,
Here.
Brad Spanbauer,
Here.
Joe Stevenson, and Jaden Zern.
Here.
We have 6 present.
Thank you. I'm guessing we have, I'm guessing we have no public comment tonight. So let's move on to the approval of the minutes. Would anybody care to make a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. Everybody in agreement to approve the minutes as written, please say aye.
Aye.
All right. Took even less time than I thought it would to get this far. I'd like to introduce our speaker for tonight. We really want to thank Ron Jones, who has come down from Appleton for us to teach us all sorts of wonderful things about wild ones. Is that too high a bar?
Maybe a little bit high bar, so
We'll see what, we'll
Yeah.
judge later, yeah, okay.
I'm here to answer your questions.
Do you have a bit of a presentation for us? or
I
you
do.
just-
I brought down a little PowerPoint.
Okay.
I thought I would start with a fairly short presentation. I think it may take 10, 15 minutes at the most, and then we can open it up for discussion. And certainly if you have some questions as we move along, that would be great. I am a member of Wild Ones. I'm on the local board for the Fox Valley area chapter, which covers about a 7-county area: Outagamie, Winnebago, Waushara, Green Lake, Fond du Lac, Calumet counties. And I also am on the Appleton Sustainability Advisory Panel, which is a similar panel to what you have going here in Oshkosh. It is fairly new. It's about a little over a year old. And yeah, so it's where I met Margie. And then I have, my background is I have worked as a forester with the Wisconsin DNR for 34 years. And last 12, 13 years, I've been working as a consulting forester, helping small private woodland owners in managing their forest lands. So I'd like to maybe start off as a little bit of an alarmist. Human activities have caused the world's wildlife populations to plummet by more than 2/3 in the last 50 years. Nearly 95% of the world's land mass has been affected somehow by human activity. Currently, the world is undergoing the 6th mass extinction of species due to human activities and climate change. I think the last mass extinction we had was when a huge meteorite slammed into the Gulf of Mexico and killed the dinosaurs and a lot of other things. So, and there had been, through the fossil records, they've seen that there's been another 4 mass extinctions, but currently we're losing hundreds, if not 1,000 times greater loss of species compared to the times when human impact did not affect what was going on. So, which is a loss of biodiversity. And we as humans evolved within the ecosystem. We are a part of the biodiversity, and so we need to maintain it and keep it going. It's estimated at least 30% of the birds in the US and Canada have vanished since 1970. So we can no longer really rely on the shrinking set of this getting the biodiversity that we need from the small amount of wildlands that are that we have set aside, you know, on state forests and others. But we need to start thinking about how we can make some connectivity within our urban areas, because we are continually developing land and creating urban areas. So, look at landscaping. How does conventional yard work, landscaping work? Is that we try to control part of the cycle of life with the use of herbicides, mowing, cutting, planting plants that we think are beautiful within our urban areas. So I'd like to talk a little bit, when we're developing our landscaping within our urban areas, we need to start thinking about choosing native plants. So when we try to pick out anything by itself, a flower or some type of plant, and we find that it's actually hitched to a lot of other critters and things, animals and insects that use those plants. How many of you heard of Doug Tallamy? He has written a couple of books. His latest, he wrote Bringing Nature Home, and his latest one is Nature's Best Hope. But within Bringing Nature Home, he has done some research and study and developed a list of plants that when they did an inventory of how many moths and butterflies they found on those plants. And you can't see this, it's not, it's awfully small, but oak trees like white oak host the greatest number. It's like 540 some moths and butterflies that they found on white oak trees. Another example would be asters. I think asters are about 112 insects, moths and butterflies that they found on aster plants. If you look at non-native plants that are planted, that oftentimes are used for landscaping, like I'll use an example, like a ginkgo tree. It's from Southeast Asia. Well, locally there's one moth and butterfly that they found on the ginkgo tree. So a lot of the non-native plants that are used, that are not native to Wisconsin, used in landscaping, or cultivars, ones that have been, genetically manipulated for creating some showy flowers or something, have a really low number of moths and butterflies that utilize them. So why is this important? Insects. Well, the other thing that Doug Tallamy found, that a lot of those insects are very specialized in how they utilize the plant, how they may, the pollinators may use it, or the type of plant that they need in order to reproduce. Those moths and butterflies. All of you may know about the monarch butterfly. Needs the drawing the black hairs.
Milkweed.
Milkweed, thank you. Yeah, milkweed for reproduction. The caterpillars need that to reproduce on it. There are generalist insects too, some of the bees, but the specialized, a lot of them are specialized, such as this hawk moth here. It has a really long proboscis that is needed to go down into the phlox flower there in order to feed. So without phlox, you're not going to have or other plants like the phlox, you're not going to have the hawk moth around. The cloudless sulfur caterpillar needs types of native pea plants in order to survive and to grow. Here's a blue bottle Jensen that the bumblebee uses it for to collecting nectar, but then it also allows that plant to survive because it's pollinating it. And we have some of these in our yard, and it is pretty cool. You can see that bumblebee go right inside of it and completely disappears and then comes back out again. So why are these insects, these moths and butterflies produce caterpillars? Well, why is that important? Well, if you look at chickadees, chickadees need an average of one caterpillar every 3 minutes to feed their young. So in order for a chickadee to raise a fledgling of new chicks, they need 6,000 to 9,000 caterpillars to feed those young birds in the nest. Without it, those caterpillars, they're not going to be able to raise the young. So again, what makes caterpillars, and we've kind of talked about it already, about the native plants. We need the native plants that can produce high numbers that are these specialized insects can use in order to create those they produce, when they reproduce, they produce the caterpillars, and the caterpillars are what the birds are feeding on, and they're in balance, so enough caterpillars will survive and create new moths, and the life cycle will go on. So I did a little research. Oshkosh is designated as a Bird City USA. So if you want birds in your community, then you will need native plants in your community also, because we do put up bird feeders and feed seed, but about 40% of the diet of the chickadee is the caterpillars, and they need it mostly when they're reproducing and creating new young. So benefits of native plants, they're easy to take care of once they're established because they are native. They have a really deep root system, and they can survive better with drought. It's reduced water that's needed. Really, you probably don't need fertilizer or chemicals to get them going. It reduces potential for invasive plants, particularly some of the problems that we have with invasive plants, both in wildlands and within our community, such as buckthorn or garlic mustard, are because people brought them here and planted them for landscaping. Again, we're sustainability, it feeds the birds. It can help create wildlife quarters within our urban areas, connecting our wildlands and through our urban areas if we have communities that are full of native plants. Having natural areas within our communities helps people's spiritual health too, being able to do forest bathing within your community. And by maybe implementing something like this on your city property, it can help educate others in your community. So, my advice and what I'm going to try to get going in Appleton is to try to get at least 70% native plants that are going to be planted for street trees, on our terraces, within our parkland, foundations and landscaping around buildings in city property, water retention ponds within the community. You can, great place to maybe create some native prairie plantings. And then I think also important is invasive plant control within the community. So Margie, you had mentioned something about lawns and how to convert that. And one thing that I don't know if any of you have heard of no-mow lawn, which is a type of prairie grass that just grows really short. It can be planted and maybe mowed once or twice during the year rather than having to go out and mow it continuously. I think it'd be really appropriate in areas that maybe don't get a high amount of public use, but are continually that want to be maintained and lawn and get mowed often. So it can help reduce the amount of mowing that happens within the community, which is going to reduce carbon output from the machines and help reduce cost, I guess, in that. So this is a picture or a PDF I took out of Prairie Nursery catalog. So they do sell no-mow lawn. In Appleton, we just in the last 3 weeks, planted a couple of test plots with 2 different varieties of seed to see which is going to do best and maybe start to push for planting more of this no-mow grass within our community. So some places where you can get some help, as Margie mentioned, I am part of the Wild Ones area, Fox Valley area chapter. Our websites do have a lot of good information, and we do use some education programs. We have a conference that we hold every year. Last spring we had Robin Wall Kimmerer down here. Brad, you were part of that, and we helped sponsor that, and that was pretty awesome. So I think we had 600 people show up for that, and over 22 or 2,300 online. So other resources, I mentioned Doug Tallamy's book, Nature's Best Hope, and he really lays out a really great case on for reasons for using natives, and he puts it right out there. He's not saying that we need to do this and we need to do it now. So I do have copies here. Our chapter is selling these for $20. This price is $30, so if anybody's interested in a copy. I have some copies of a pamphlet, Climate Resilient Landscaping. So it's talking about landscaping with native plants and some of the benefits of it. And I do have one, Native Garden Design, so this is a little more specific, but this may help in planning something for your community. Homegrown National Park is a site that Doug Tallamy has put together, and it's where people can get their individual properties on the map for planting native plants, and communities can do that too. And there's a whole lot of information on Homegrown National Park website. If you just Google Homegrown National Park, you'll be able to find that out. I do have a handout here that is by Doug Tallamy. It's just a one-pager talking about 4 goals for ecological goals for native landscaping. And then the other thing, I know you had talked a little bit about ordinances. So I do have a sample ordinance here that Wild Ones has put together for communities for encouraging native landscaping.
Excellent.
Yeah. So
does anybody have any questions for Ron?
When you're talking about the 70% native plants and test in the community of Appleton, is that city approved, or is this like a private thing that?
So I am currently working as being on the Appleton Sustainability Panel, working on an initiative to try to get something going, and we're just getting it going, talking about it. So we have nothing in place right now.
Okay.
I did work on an urban forestry grant with our city forester last spring, where we were trying to get a grant through the DNR that was funding coming from the Inflation Reduction Act. And we weren't successful, but I did share with him this book, and he read it, and he was enthused about it. So, but the reason I say 70%, that is something I got from Doug Tallamy, listening to him talk, and that he feels that if we can get at least 70% of a yard or property, a community within natives, we're doing really good. So.
Thank you.
Yep, and especially with street trees that not all. It's the terraces are a really tough place to grow plants. Yeah, and not all trees can handle that. So you need to pick trees that can handle salt and some compaction, and so you may need to pick some trees that are not specifically native to Wisconsin, but for the most part, if we can get at least 70% of them. Yeah.
Thank you for that feedback on the 70%, because I think our current ordinance, as it reads, there's a provision in there that allows people to apply for a native landscaping area.
Yep, I read it.
Yeah, and right now I think it says that it needs to be replaced with all native plants. So And that's a high bar, right? And especially within the time constraint that's on there, those are some of the things that we're looking to adjust. Do you think, I think 70% or something below 100 is more achievable. How long do you think is reasonable for like the city to come back and check, or if there's ever complaints about, a certain area not being up to the site design is how it's currently written, right? That you have to design it and list out the plants that you're using. How long do you think we should consider putting in there for the ordinance?
For,
For converting from a lawn to a native planting area?
For it to become established, you mean?
Yeah, yeah.
to be established?
Exactly.
Yeah, so, I think prairies take at least 3 years to get them going, so maybe a 3-year period to get it up and I think about our yard, we don't need a permit to plant. And a lot of native plants can be planted just like foundation plants or planting a tree. If you're planting a tree in your yard, you probably don't need to get that permit from the city, I wouldn't imagine, just.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah.
It's just for if you want to go and replace the majority, I think is the answer we got last month, the majority of your yard with a native planting area that is not constrained by a boundary, is how it's currently written.
Okay.
Yeah. So that makes sense, yeah. Like you
Yeah,
should be
so-
able to just plant.
Yeah, but I think of our own yard as, it's been a 10-year process that we continually planting plants and maybe removing some, and so it's not something we do completely converted all at one time. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, and in that regard, like, what are other ways that we can help enable people in planting more native plants? We have resources, right, that are available online, but how else can we, as people listening to this and part of this meeting, but also like the residents and the city of Oshkosh help promote that?
Yeah, I think if the city of Oshkosh starts doing these plantings and people are aware that this is happening on city property, that may motivate some people to do that, and they could see examples of it. Yeah, education, it's $1 million question. How do you motivate people to do things? So it's just, yeah, I don't know if you have a website that's devoted to sustainability within Oshkosh.
Yes,
You can
yes,
promote
we
it
do.
on there. Be great if you could offer some grants for that to happen.
Sure. Yeah, I think our first step that we're talking about as a group is just to try to open up the ordinances in a way that supports people that are interested already, right? And then I think what you're talking about too is another step above that, where we're leading by a demonstration in partnership with the city.
Yeah. So how long has this ordinance been on the books for applying?
Years?
About
2
years.
2 years.
Okay.
But it hasn't been used by anybody,
Okay,
pretty much.
that has not been used.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
also not written very clearly, which is
That's
also why
what
we're trying to
We're
bring it
seeking,
back up.
seeking to
Gotcha.
address.
To clarify what its true intentions are, and then how can we make that more clear to our citizens?
You said you're doing test plots of the no-mow
Yes.
turf. Where are you doing those?
You know where Memorial Park is located? In Appleton?
I do not.
It's on the north, it's on city property.
It's on city property?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so our city parks director, actually, we're working with him, and he put in a couple of test, and his crews put in a couple of test plots.
I think to Jacob's point, I think people are in general in favor of these kinds of things. I think the idea of, less mowing or no mowing, I guess however you want to phrase it, is probably alluring to people for a variety of reasons. I would think that having a demonstration site where folks could kind of see this in action would give them a little bit of like, oh, this is how my lawn will look using this like no-mow, low-mow turf alternative, right? Like I can reseed my yard with this grass, it will be shorter, or it will grow a little longer, but I don't have to mow it as much, right? But it's gonna look a certain way.
Yeah.
So maybe we could, that seems like a reasonable thing to do. I mean, I think to Jake's point about like resources for people or offering people kind of what they can see. I mean, it would be nice if somewhere in the city, I would hope we could establish some gardens that have native plants that are planted and arranged and designed in such a way that they look like a garden, but they have native plants in them. So kind of give people some inspiration of like, oh, I could do this in my yard, right? I just need to maybe lay it out this way, right? I think sometimes people just need to kind of see it in action.
Yeah.
That feels like an achievable thing, I would think.
There's a beautiful example of that at Winnebago County Park. There's a whole bunch of trees in a particular area that are all labeled on this sign. So you can go look at different trees, and I think it was a project that was funded through a couple different organizations got together, but it was essentially to show what do these trees look like when they grow to a certain height, you know,
Mhm.
which would you enjoy, and trying to get people involved in that sort of landscape design.
And that was the original intention, I think, of the Menominee Park plot, too, along the lake shore.
Yeah, the shore.
But that was for
Sure.
holding water back and saving.
So our local
Decoys.
chapter has a grant program that we can offer up to $500, covers mostly the costs of the plants, and it's for nonprofits. That I know one of the teachers at Oshkosh North received a grant last year for planting some native plants, starting some native plants there. So that might be an opportunity for opening up.
Is that an Appleton thing or a Wild Ones thing?
It's a Wild Ones thing.
Okay.
Yep, so nonprofits within Oshkosh would be available for that grant too. I happen to head up the grant program, so I can send you some information on it.
That would be fantastic.
Yeah, in fact, if you go to our chapter website, Wild Ones Fox Valley area, it's on the front page, there's a link to it.
Okay.
Yeah, I know, Christine, on our books, we have a rule that in parking lots, in like the little islands that they have, they're required to have trees within those
Yeah.
islands. And I know that Wild Ones awarded like Christine Ann some
Yes,
trees
yep,
as
that's good.
part of that program. So you can also see that in their
Mm.
parking lot, like I think for like ironwood trees.
Ironwood
Mm.
trees, yes.
A nice native tree that are there now too. So yeah, thank you so
Yeah,
much for
that's
supporting
great
our
that
community.
we
Yeah.
awarded last spring for them, so.
Yeah.
Ron, can you talk a little bit about the, I don't know exactly what it encompasses anymore, but it used to be like a 2-day event in late January?
Yeah, so it's a one-day event. We have
Okay.
a conference, all-day event. It's going to be held in Neenah this year at Bridgewood, starting at 8 until 4:30 in the afternoon. It's our annual Towards Harmony with Nature conference. So that's going to be on February 8th, 2025.
Okay.
February 8th.
And we do have members in Oshkosh. Yeah, the community, is it Evergreen? Is that the retirement community? So Bob and Carol Niendorf have created native plantings at the retirement center. And so they would probably, and we've given them grants for getting that going. So there's another place they could use it as an example.
Okay,
And they would
excellent.
love
They
to-
they
love to
used to
show
live
it.
about 2 blocks from me, and I would walk by their house. They had a beautiful yard, too, before they went to Evergreen, so.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were both on the board up until a couple of years ago, and Carol's health is,
It happens.
yep.
We age. Look at
It's
all
beautiful
these,
thing.
look at all these wonderful people on
That's
this
great.
board, though, Ron. Isn't it
Yeah.
amazing?
Yeah.
This is the best board ever, in my opinion. And pretty much everybody but me has a sustainability degree, so, of some sort or other, so. Or, they're sustainability directors or something.
You have an honorary one, Margie.
Ooh, I want one to put on my wall.
Yeah.
So, well, does anybody else have any further questions for Ron at this point? I know that he would like to, he was kind enough to come, but he does have another meeting that's coming up, so
have
do
a
have-
meeting at 7,
Yeah.
with our chapter has a board meeting tonight up at the Wild Ones Center, so.
Nice.
I've got a few copies of this I can leave, I don't know.
Can you leave those with us?
Before you go, I think one of our topics coming up as well is the the staff training.
I can give you all of these. What's that, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Yeah, one of our upcoming topics before you go is staff training, and I was hoping to get your input on that too. I've seen in a lot of parks, there's a lot of beautiful native plants that come up by themselves.
Sure.
And especially along like the water's edge, I see a lot of milkweed and other plants coming up, as well as potentially invasive plants in that area too. And we want to make sure that the city, as they operate, they're doing what they can to. That's kind of easy, like potentially saving milkweed plants that are already growing, right? So you don't have to do any of the work of planting it. You don't have to do the work of, say, maintaining that area. What sort of training materials are some of these good things from the Wild
These
Ones?
are more general information, trying to convince you that it's a good thing to do, so, it's not really training per se.
Would maybe like some of the Wild One events be a good or suitable for the city staff to attend?
So we have, our local chapter has started a plant certification class where we are offering probably 10 to 12 classes. It's paid classes that are taught throughout the year that on various subjects, and it may be very appropriate to what you're, certain ones for providing some education along that lines.
Sure.
Yeah, that's something that Shannon Davis Faust has put together and is organizing. So again, you can get information on our website, the Fox Valley Area Chapter website, on the classes that are being offered.
Sure, I think that'd be some great continued education for all of us, including, city people. Yeah.
I think it would also be a good thing to potentially reach out to those instructors and see if we could get them here at the city instead of having the hundreds of city staff potentially going to those events. We
Yeah.
just snag a couple of them
Sure.
and bring them over to
Yep.
do, and then we can kind of tailor them potentially to work more specific for the ideas that we have in mind instead of, a
Yep.
full day sort of
Yep.
thing. Definitely a possibility though.
So if you're interested in something like that, I think that we should get Shannon involved with this conversation, and she could maybe help facilitate
That sounds good.
something like that happening.
We'll make some connections. That sounds
And Shannon
great.
is
We have her
professor at
contact
the
info.
university here in Oshkosh, so.
Yep. Perfect.
I wanted to ask you, Ron, would you trust me to leave one of those books and I'll send you money for it?
Sure,
Okay, just
no
one.
problem.
I only need one.
I'll
Okay.
take it for her.
I have a question.
Yes.
Can you leave the sample ordinances with us too?
Yes, I was gonna ask for that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
there you go, you can pass those around.
You can share mine.
Okay, well, great. Oh, if you have money, sure. I don't have any money. She'll pay you.
Awesome.
Okay, now you
Pay
can
them.
have the book.
No, you have it.
So I got a couple more of these too, I don't know. if-
I'll take
Oh, yeah, I would take one if
Thank you
there's
so
still
much for
some.
bringing them.
Yeah, they didn't take care, so. Oh, good, we need this.
been on this for years.
Okay, well, thank you so much. We really
Okay.
appreciate all
Thank
the,
you.
all
Thank
the
you. Much
goodies you
appreciated.
sent
Yeah.
and all the
Hopefully it's been
information.
helpful,
and-
and,
Yes.
you know where I am and how to get a hold of me? if you
I
have more
do.
questions. So-
I can track you down. You cannot escape.
Thank you so much.
So
Thank
what
you,
is it,
Ron.
the 29th, then we have our next sustainability meeting?
Well, it's every fifth Monday.
Yeah, it's going to be in Appleton, so,
Yeah, that's right, you're hosting.
yes.
That's what happens when somebody doesn't show up at a meeting.
Yeah, well, I was already planning to do that.
Yeah, and we put you down, Brad, for the next one.
You weren't there either, right?
Voluntold.
It's merely a voluntary thing, no rules. Okay then, well, let's move on to the next thing on the agenda.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Next up is tree production zones. Who wanted to address that? Was that you, Emma?
Yeah, So unfortunately, not a huge update from last month. We've had some staffing changes, so some things have been just kind of put back while we went through that little change. So there actually has been some internal conversations though about the tree protection zone. So the next step is basically meeting with all the departments that need to be involved with that. So we just need to hopefully schedule that meeting within the next month or so. Forestry, Public Works, and then planners, yes, parks, and just kind of talk through what the board's ideas are and kind of see what we could create essentially for what that ordinance will look like.
Thank you for mentioning that. First, we should really ask Sarah to introduce herself to us.
Sure. These don't really work for the room, do they?
No.
So my name is Sarah Rutkowski. I'm local and native to Berlin, which is about 20 miles west of here. I went to UWO for, I was a political science major, but I was there at the very start of the environmental studies program. And one of my first environmental professors was Jim Feldman. And he really got my butt in gear. So originally I was going, I eventually went to law school in California, but I planned on going to become either a district attorney or defense. And I went into environmental water contract law. So I do contribute that to him. So I have very fond memories of Jim and that program. So I'm very excited to get back into that, very much so. So I do have a sustainability background, and when I was at law school in California, they had just started a sustainability program. I mean, we're talking, this was a good 20 years ago, so there was a lot of what is sustainability and how does it work in our current economy and things like that. So I've really enjoyed it and watched it. I've stepped out of it, but now I'm back in it and I'm very excited. I am also very impressed with the group in front of me because it was like you were talking to a wall 20 years ago about what sustainability was. So seeing the excitement and the passion and the energy about it, it's very, very, very exciting. If you have any other questions about my background, I'm happy to expand later. But, yes.
And you are now employed by the city of Oshkosh as?
I am. So I used to work for the city of Berlin, and Oshkosh scooped me, and I am now the assistant community development director. So yes, with Mark leaving, we're down somebody in the planning division, which means staff's picking up the slack. They've got a lot going on. There are a lot of projects right now as well. Plus, I can hit the ground running, but I can only do so much as I'm still learning my feet within the city itself. So we're just gonna hold tight for a little bit, but don't fret. I am very much passionate about this, as Emma and Brandon found out very quickly. So you've got a force behind you on the city side as well.
Welcome to SAB. We're excited
We like
to have
to hear
you.
that. Music to our ears.
So, okay, well, we're down through tree protection zones then. Energy Innovation Grant update.
Yeah, so the agreement is still in the works. So I guess there's some state forms that need to be filled out before the agreement can get signed, and then the agreement with the consultant, and we can start moving forward. So the forms actually have been sent to the consultant as of last week. They're just reviewing to see if they need to fill anything out, and then staff's hoping by the end of this week maybe everything will be signed and moving forward, but it's just kind of the tentative deadline for now.
Okay, thank you. That was a quick update. I like that. Sustainability plan update.
Yeah, so I don't think I've updated the board on this yet, but we got ARPA funding for the plan update. So we got $60,000 to do the update. Staff started the RFQ, and that needs to be sent out basically as soon as possible because, as you remember from previous discussions earlier this year, the funding needs to be allocated by the end of this year, 2024. And I actually have something I need help with today. We looked at the current sustainability plan and just kind of what the topics were split up by with the goals and whatnot. So we kind of sat down and we were like, what goals should be prioritized with the update? Kind of want to touch on those for the RFQ. So I typed up just what staff's, let me pull it up. This one. So sorry.
A little bigger.
So staff started typing up the top ones, and then these are what are in the current plan, so I don't know.
Are these the chapters that
Yep,
you mean?
yep.
Okay.
So the core areas, I guess that would be touched on. I don't know if we're happy with what the plan currently has, or if we want to change it up a little bit. Any recommendations are appreciated.
When do you need this information by?
Tonight.
Basically, it sounds like.
Okay.
And keep in mind, we can also put in a little caveat in it that says whoever becomes the vendor, the contractor, whomever, we can ask them to provide their own suggestions for the chapters or recommendations for how to break it up as well. They may have found something that works better in the past. This is just our suggestion. Staff took a look at what they thought might be a better breakup based off of how they've been working through the plan over the last couple of years. So that's where they've landed on the top part. The bottom part is what was already put in the 2019 plan.
Can you make them just a little smaller so we can see them both at once, please?
Honestly, some of them are the same, just in
Yeah.
a different
Yeah.
spot.
Basically, we
Like government
we
A
tried
instead of E.
to combine some of these, add stuff that may be more relevant, in 2024 now.
Well, it's great. I think you have a really holistic list, like what you're showing right now. It really does take a lot of different aspects, and I think the current plan does it well to look at the breadth of it, and it comes off like it's a lot too, right? Because it's so
Absolutely.
many different topic areas, and I'm just curious if we can maybe not shorten it, but if there's a couple in here that would really be of major importance to us, or we think are going to be most impactful. I think that might be good to point out in the RFQ, is something that we think would really help, because we know the best of what our community is facing and problems that we can help out. So,
You want to highlight 3 to 5?
Let me just throw out a couple examples from the city of Madison. I think it would be cool if we look at a plan that's been established in 2020 and beyond to see what the new topics are. Because I feel like some of our comprehensive plan might, our actual comprehensive plan might touch some of this, and we don't necessarily need to repeat it, but we want to make sure it's focused on our issues. So Madison has housing, resilient city design and infrastructure, renewable energy, decarbonization, transportation, clean water, zero waste, healthy ecosystems, and a vibrant green economy. So yes, that's tailored to them because they're working on specific projects in that area, but if we maybe want to think, it would be nice if Alyssa was here with the water issues actually tonight for this, but maybe what's an issue in Oshkosh that we're trying to solve with having a sustainability plan, and use that as a topic.
I'm glad that it says climate resiliency, but how did Madison state that?
They have resilient city design and infrastructure.
Okay. Which is the same thing, it's just they
Word
were a little
different.
more specific with it, maybe.
Yeah.
I found in the last month that people don't understand the word sustainability, as we've all known for a long time, but when you throw resiliency at them, they have no clue. And I feel personally that our world has now gone beyond the sustainability thing. We're having a little trouble with that whole sustainability thing. We've got to really pursue the resiliency. And, when the second hurricane is going to hit the same place in a week, yes, we're a little bit isolated, or it seems a little less real to us here in Wisconsin, but that doesn't mean that something isn't going to happen here and I have determined through discussions I've been having with other people in the political world that basically not only does Oshkosh not have have any resiliency plan, but we don't have anything at the county or state levels to speak of either. Because why? It's just Wisconsin. Everything's cool here. Maybe you'll get hit by a tornado sometime, but that's about all that happens. To which I would say, I don't think we can count on that. So I'm very glad to see that there. Let's run through that list again. It's like matching it up to this.
Yeah, I
if
was
you
gonna
don't
say, I
mind.
feel like waste management could get thrown in somewhere else. I feel like that's sewer, water combination.
Garbage.
I think
I
it'd be
see
a
it as garbage and
landfill and
recycling.
Garbage and
Yeah.
recycling, which has been a huge point we've really focused on
Which
this year.
we
If
are-
anything, I would highlight it.
I mean, I like
versus
the
combine it
words.
with something else.
We're getting different, from the same words up there, we're getting two different, totally different ideas, so we need to change the words.
Signifier, signified. I like zero waste or near zero waste if we're looking at something like that.
What about zero waste management?
So that means we don't do anything with it?
No.
how I interpreted that.
Should I add
What
it?
what does government mean? Is that like governance, administration of?
When it was originally written, it was very much geared towards making requests of the municipal government to do things like look at cost-benefit analysis, as opposed to just the cost of this paper, so we're gonna buy the cheapest ream, without taking any of the other factors into account. It didn't fly very well. Basically, we just got told no. And again, that's one of those things that goes back to having 3-year cycles with your counselors. Joe, I'm sorry you're not here, but I'm going to say it anyway. Because people don't tend to see the longer-term picture for the 5 to 10 years that something sustainable might take. So that's where it originated and what we were trying to establish with it.
So government recommendations or government actions for sustainability could be more specific, or?
Well, it could also be just education I think it maybe goes back to our training of city staff, to help them understand why. They need the whys.
I guess to me that sounds more like planning or administration and governance. Like, how are your people understanding sustainability? How are they doing sustainability and planning for it and governing with it?
Including
Yeah.
it in everything they touch,
Yeah.
which is what we want. But, so yeah, governance is maybe a better word. Energy usage.
Renewable energy, do we want to put that in, or is that too?
What about green energy usage?
Just energy consumption. Usage feels odd.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could just say energy. I think certainly we would like to switch to, I would make the recommendation that we switch to renewable energy. I think sometimes green can get a connotation with it that some folks, it can be a little off-putting, or, right, I think language is important, right? Just in the way that many of us have interpreted these words differently, I think people can sometimes put negative connotations on words. So sometimes it's good to just think about which one, what word to use. I'm thinking about energy and then climate resiliency, but I'm thinking about emissions. I don't see the word emissions up there.
Okay, so get rid of usage and then add emissions, you're thinking?
What did Madison call
could.
that?
Madison has renewable energy and decarbonization. But they have a
Decarbonization.
commitment to
Yeah.
decarbonization by
And that's-
2050 or whatever.
But that's basically what we need to do.
Yeah.
But we can't call it that if we're not committed to that.
Well, right, that's just it is, I think,
But this is a plan, it's not saying it's in action, it's where we're hoping to go, right?
Okay.
Isn't that
Future
the way you
thinking.
guys would interpret a sustainability plan?
So where it
Looking towards the
has
future, where we
been.
want to go?
So renewable energy and decarbonization is what,
I like
That's
that.
our pitch, but I mean, if,
if
I
that's
like that a
scale
lot.
back.
yeah.
And then the land use, and that switched from land use and development to land use and economic development.
Well, essentially combined F and B from below. Economic development.
Oh,
and-
yes, we had them both there, yeah.
That was called vibrant green economy, but
Oh,
I
God,
think
that's way
that's
Sorry.
Well,
not gonna
it's-
happen.
and
That sounded delightful.
Well, and that's part of what the planning department does. I mean, that's basically what they do, but we want them to have a sustainable eye on things too. Or maybe a resilient eye. That
Vibrant's just a
probably
very
is brown instead of blue, I don't
hopeful
know.
word. I liked it.
What?
Vibrant is just such a hopeful word. I really like that.
So we should add vibrant in there?
I'm just throwing it out there.
Vibrant.
It was nice.
But is it
It was
descriptive?
nice.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
So, why can't we?
Vibrant right here.
I mean, you could have sustainable development.
Yeah. Also, we have to keep in mind that the consulting firm that writes this might have their own
They
opinion.
might put
and
their own
change.
terms on
I
this
do
anyway,
understand
yeah.
what how you have it bricked off of like how you want to explain the detail that we want in each
Mhm.
chapter.
The one thing I don't see in the top list, but in some ways is missing from the bottom list, and this is very interesting, and I can explain why, is like there's no direct call to water, like water quality. I mean, I would also argue air quality, I guess, could be summed up in atmosphere on the bottom list.
Atmosphere,
Mm,
yeah.
Now you have
That's what it was.
community health, which I think one could argue air quality, water quality could be rolled into community health. I think it could also be potentially listed in environmental conservation. I guess I'm just thinking about
How do you call it out?
air and water quality as like,
As it should be addressed
Like
singly,
clean
right? So that we don't,
water.
so it doesn't
So
get
we just add
forgotten.
that air and water quality. and
yeah, if you want
can-
to add it, or yeah.
I'm sure the consultant
that's
will be able to
environmental
combine and change
Sure,
as
yeah.
needed as well. And they're definitely gonna have, shareholder meetings, making sure that they understand what you guys wanna focus on, what you feel are the real issues within the community, and then highlight them throughout the plan as well, with measurables that staff and the board can meet together.
Yeah, I think that was kind of my first thought when you brought up the list, is like, I wish the community and like the businesses and
They
the
will
city
be
could
a part of
have
the
had like
planning
input
process.
into the list, but like maybe that could be a part of our scope of work for them, right?
It's
like-
in there.
Yeah,
public
okay.
engagement
is,
piece
yep.
of it, yeah.
Most government plans have some sort of community stakeholder events where they'll be included. And I believe we have in there a few times, in-person and virtual options,
Cool.
so.
Awesome.
Mhm.
So maybe we can also be the leaders in the city's way of doing that, to actually be sure that citizens know it's happening.
Yeah,
Because we
absolutely.
got a very low, in my opinion, return on the parks survey. And there are so many other ways that we could additionally reach out. I'm not saying that what's being done now is wrong, but it needs more. Because how many ways can you reach to somebody, And you get different demographics, so.
I was actually gonna suggest education. Because there's all of these ideas, you guys have wonderful ideas, but it's really getting them out to members of the public. Even when he was here talking about the different types of trees and native plantings, if we use them in the parks, great, but people aren't gonna know. They're just gonna wonder why that one area is a little more overgrown than the other. So you really need to have a little plaque or something there that says, hey, this is a test plot, we're trying out different plants.
I
And it's
believe
super
that we
cheap to
had
do
an
that, but
education and outreach component initially.
you
I
can
don't-
even
I
do
couldn't-
governance and education, put those two together, because the city really should be doing it
would.
hand in hand.
yeah, or governance, education, and outreach.
There, that's a great one.
Yeah, let's have the word outreach in there, because that's where we're failing, I think.
Yeah.
That covers every base I can think of then.
That's plenty for that.
Yeah,
to get started.
definitely.
It's pretty
And thank you,
comprehensive.
Emma, for like, this is awesome that we were able to get this going. It'll be exciting for us to update.
Yes,
When it
Emma did
comes-
a great job.
When it comes to transportation, I think it needs to say more than just transportation. I think it needs to say sustainable transportation.
I would agree.
Because just putting more cars on the road really isn't cutting it. I was so disappointed when our city decided not to have the green buses anymore. It's kind of like, doesn't it seem like our atmosphere and weather and everything like that would be a lot like Madison's? Doesn't it sort of seem that way? Are they that much further south?
No.
And they do really well with that, so maybe we need to kind of look at other local things and make recommendations there too.
Anything else on this?
No.
Good.
Okay. Thank you much.
Agenda. Okay.
Okay, does that take us to the sustainability staff training update?
Yeah, so it's my understanding HR did interviews with a few consultants, I guess, that are potential groups to do the trainings, and I think they may have chose one, or they kind of have a couple in mind. they did put it in as a budget enhancement this year, so we won't know until once budget goes to council and what all gets approved and not, whether this will be happening this year, what it's gonna look like and whatnot, so I'll just keep you updated as I get updates.
So it sounds like it's going to cost the city some
So,
money
yeah.
to train people up,
Mhm.
both in their time and the consultant.
Mhm.
Yeah, I wonder if there's anything this board can do to help reduce that burden if there's a need, or if it doesn't get approved. Please, yeah, let us know, because
Yeah.
I think some people would want to talk to them about it, and as long as they're qualified. And
There's a lot of knowledge in this room. You could probably tap into it.
sure.
Yes, but we all volunteer, so therefore, we don't know much.
That's not true, Margie. Come on.
Very gloom and doom this evening.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, well, 16 years from now, let's see how you're doing.
All right, that's fair. That's fair.
Okay, so that was our update, and was that our discussion on that? Any further discussion? Okay. Agenda items for a future meeting will include native landscaping areas, which we now have tons of resources for, which is awesome. And tree protection zones, which we didn't really touch on tonight, did we? Did we skip that one?
We kind of moved through.
We kind of said we had to wait on that one, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yes.
we're waiting on staff.
Yeah.
Yep,
That was
that's
the
right.
staff.
We're waiting
meeting.
on,
Okay.
yeah, more info.
Okay. Lomo, spring and summer, which I think we need to talk about at least by January so that we can get information out. And, which reminds me of the other thing, do we want to continue the environmental award, the Environmental Leadership Award? Because if we do, we need to start getting that out so people know about it, but I don't know that we need to continue with it. I think at this point, it's probably optional for the Sustainability Board. Our partner on that, Rotary, has not reached out in any way. I don't know that they still have the committee they had that had been working on it. I think that's what happened, is they don't have that committee. So I think we need to decide if we really want to pursue that, or if we thought it was, valuable or not. I know some people here have nominated people, some people have been recipients of it. Is there an advantage to continuing that, or should we just kind of, forget to do it this year?
I'd be able to discuss it at the next meeting if you want that as an agenda item.
Yes.
Yeah, I think let's put it on the next meeting's
Exactly.
agenda to have a quick discussion about it.
Yeah, I wanted to throw that out there so we make sure we get that on there. So, you've got that down, Emma? Okay.
In a way, on these topics, if we want to say, have some draft options for these different ordinances and tree protection zones, native landscaping areas, and these other areas, do we need to submit that in advance as material that we're going to be discussing? Or what's the process? Because I think we've looked at it in the after discussion before, so I'm just curious, what's a good way for us to collaborate and also present it as something that we can work on together?
So like doing the workshop and then the next meeting, bringing it up to be approved by city. I think that's how it would
That's
work.
typically how we've done
Yeah.
it.
Okay, sounds good.
Workshop first.
Okay.
Are we still okay with doing it that way?
Yeah, I guess tree protection zones, I'm hoping internally we can have those discussions, then we can bring it to you for review and we don't have to workshop that again before, having those discussions again.
Sure.
I think that's the one that we were hoping to kind of prioritize before looking back at the native landscaping areas, just because that may be a little easier to get done, where when you take an ordinance and try to tear it apart, that may take a little bit of time. I mean, we're welcome to talk about it if new ideas come up, someone may draft something. I'm fine with workshopping it here and there, or if you want something added to the agenda packet, you can always send that to me too.
And how far before a meeting would you want to receive that?
At least 2 weeks before, because usually the agenda goes out the week before the meetings.
And you need a week to get it through the rest of the staff to be sure we can actually talk about it?
Yes.
So like 3 weeks, or just like try to like
Just do it tomorrow.
Yeah.
That's
Give
the
them enough
feedback I'm
time.
looking for. Is what's the process and yeah, thanks.
Yes, and I think, was it you? Didn't you send me some stuff that I?
Yeah, but
Yeah,
me and Joe we both had some drafts, but I think as a group, just deciding on what we want to move forward with or what that looks like in process. Sounds like we're gonna both the city is going to be working on drafting the tree protection zone one and working on that, right?
Yeah, I mean, we have the draft that we talked about last meeting, so
Okay.
kind of use that hopefully as a starting point, at least getting, the departments involved and kind of show what the board discussed, what they would like to see in the ordinance and whatnot. But ultimately, that's not just going to be planning's decision, to meet with Parks and Public Works as they're also involved in those protection zone.
So you're proposing that we go ahead and wait for what the staff is doing with it to bring it back to us? And then we could put it on as a workshop and discuss it before we would bring it to an actual meeting? I mean, to me, the workshop we hold after the meeting so we can really discuss things in depth. Do we want to do that with those two items at the appropriate time? Or do we want to just take it to?
To a meeting?
Yeah.
I kind of take issue with that though, because if we're generating our recommendations and the city then takes it and modifies it, and then we're up for saying yes or no, and then the council has to say yes or no, I feel like we're losing some of the collaboration that at least I want to help with, and I think other
Right.
citizens would too. You got to have that public input.
From my understanding, when the native plantings went through the first time, there was a lot of back and forth between staff, and then it came back to the sustainability board during like the actual meeting. I guess I would recommend we do the same with these two ordinances. We do our edits, we bring it to the board. You guys, say, I like this, I want this changed, and then we'll take it back, and then we'll bring it back for a future meeting. We'll just keep doing that.
So we could make this last like a year.
I mean, if that's
If
how
we-
long it takes, yeah.
And I guess I would like to kind of see if there's a more efficient way that we could do it. But the reason I brought this up is because I know you all sit around and watch the Plan Commission meetings too, because they are riveting, let me tell you. But with the Plan Commission, if somebody's going to bring something, say they want to put a window in their house and there was a window there before, or whatever, they may come in and talk to us, just as a group, but not as part of the meeting, and that's called workshopping it. So then they can get the input to see if there's enough people on the commission that think it's a good idea, that they should try to go forward with it and go ahead and pay an architect and blah, 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 I'm wondering if it would be more efficient for us to do that with some of these things that we're now looking at and workshop it as a group, which would be the collaboration part, and then have the staff look at it and give it back to us. Does that seem like it would cut out a step, or what do you think, Sarah?
Well, I'm thinking that one of the reasons why we want to touch base with Parks and Forestry is because they have their own rules and guidelines and things that they follow that we're not always 100% aware of. So part of the initial touching base with them is to say, okay, what do you guys think about this proposed ordinance? This is the language that the Sustainability Board is looking at. Do you feel that this is still compatible with what you're doing in your day-to-day job? We want to make sure that we're not upsetting too many departments with suggestions that we're bringing forward, that not only does the public feel collaborative with it, but that other departments that it's going to impact feel collaborative with it as well. So it's kind of twofold, and you guys are stuck in the middle. So you're going to be doing, I think, more of the public side of it and be bringing your suggestions and your ideas from all of your different backgrounds and demographics into it. But we also got to touch base with staff, and I don't think that those departments are going to be showing up at sustainability board meetings. So there's going to be a little bit of a give and take. No matter what you do, there's no way of getting around it, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think there's, like we're saying, a balance to be struck, and I'm so glad that we're engaging them for feedback. That's exactly what's needed. I think there's a good reason that we're doing these things, which is to improve our local environment as well as potentially reduce costs for the city, and we want to advocate for them as well too. Yeah, thanks for walking us through that, yeah.
And we want to hit just the right tone, because they're going to be helping us implement them across all of their departments as well. So we want to make sure that they're on board with it and okay with it too.
Sure.
Okay, is there anything else for future agenda items? No? Okay then. Our next meeting will be on Monday, November 4th. And if anybody would like to say they want to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.